Hi, everyone, and welcome back to episode 3 of the Inner Monologue, a podcast for the Overthinkers. And this episode, I'm going to be speaking to Bianca Davis from Mind Body Bee and East Meets West Training, and she's got a great perspective on yoga, her journey to yoga, and where we might find the yoga using physical postures and other techniques. I hope you enjoy. Just kind of start off by asking a little bit about how you came to be teaching yoga and the various other things that you teach along the way. So I don't know how you got kicked off on your journey, into the yoga scape.
Yeah. So it's actually quite an interesting story. I never meant to become a yoga teacher. It was never a goal or an intention I had. Um, the very first time I did yoga, I was probably like 10 or 12, and I hated it. I was like, this is the most boring thing ever. Like, why are we laying on the floor? This is not exercise. I'm just gonna go play volleyball and basketball and run and do all of the sports that I grew up playing because both my parents are coaches. And so I was always into movement and fitness and sports and stuff like that. And then in 2012, I had a sort of traumatic early death in the family. And I didn't handle it I mean, I have a very strange relationship with death, but that's probably a different conversation. It's just like, okay, well, that's it. Can't change that. So we'll just not, we'll just do something else. And so I threw myself into work and I ended up getting diagnosed with narcolepsy. Fast forward years later, I think it's probably some kind of like adrenal fatigue or like nervous system overwhelm. But I was living halfway across the world and I was falling asleep 10 to 20 times a day. I wasn't able to hold a job. I, I wasn't able to, I'd sleep 16 hours a night and not be able to wake up in the morning. And a friend of mine had just moved to Korea where I was at, and she had been doing yoga online before she moved. And she was like, hey, I found this class that's in English. It's taught by a fellow American. Let's go check it out. She brought me, and for the first time, maybe ever, my mind went quiet. And I didn't have that experience again until I went scuba diving. I don't know if you scuba dive, but like when you go underwater and it's just silence, I got goosebumps. It was like that in my first class, and I was like, okay, I don't really know what's happening, but I'm gonna keep coming back. And she broke the mold for me of like what yoga was about and how people used yoga in their lives. And it from the beginning, it wasn't just about doing the shapes. It was life lessons every step of the way. And I had reached a point where I was like pretty much done. Like I was comfortable in my life in Korea and I had moved overseas to challenge myself and to break out of monotony. And I had kind of fell back into monotony. So I was ready for a change and I just had this feeling. I knew that yoga could help me heal. It didn't make sense to me, but I had heard amazing things from people. And so I was already on that side of the world. I said, okay, I'm going to go to India. I'm going to go to the birthplace of yoga. I'm going to learn this thing and see what it's like. I just wanted to develop a stronger home practice. I just wanted to be able to know what I was doing and not need to go to a class because I was mobile and I was traveling in different places that didn't speak English. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll go learn this. And they actually didn't want me to, they like accepted me. I went there. And then the day that we were supposed to start, they had told me, they're like, we don't want you to participate in asana class. And I was like, but I've come all this way. Like, what are you talking about? They're like, your medical intake. We don't want you to like fall down and hit your head. There's no hospital. The closest hospital is 30, 45 minutes away, 2 villages away. And there's nothing we can do. And I was like, I'm strong. I know that this can help me. I'm here for a reason. You have to let me do this. I'm crying and crying and crying. And they're like, okay, fine. But once the head teacher comes back from this funeral he's at, you're going to work with him every day, specifically just on this thing. And I was like, okay. So he gave me three poses, three pranayama exercises, and within 14 to 21 days, I was completely symptom free. I had no more narcolepsy. I was not falling asleep. I had something had changed. I didn't need the medication that I was prescribed for it, and I wasn't having any symptoms. And it's been over 10 years since then. And because I was already teaching English, when it came to the like art of teaching stuff, it just made sense. It was just very natural for me. And so I just felt like, well, this thing has given me so much. It's now something that I can't not share with other people.
Awesome. I love that yoga origin story. That's great. I think it's like it's been so nice to tap into everyone's unique journeys because I think like from the outside in, it can seem quite samey. Like you've just explained that you were like 12, you went to a yoga class. It was like, what kind of yoga would you describe that like? Hatha yoga, just slow, lying down, lunging. That's all I remember. I did hatha yoga for like 20 years. Lunge, lunge. And then you went to this class in Korea and some mindfulness, heady experiences gave you a little glimpse of something a little bit deeper. And then you just like threw yourself in. And then, so I've written down, what were the three poses? What was
Okay.
I just want to, I'm like so curious.
So I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a hanging rope. I've got a hanging rope behind me
Yeah.
right there. So it was downward facing dog with the hanging belt.
Mhm.
So my school was a mixed styles school, but the teacher's sort of background is very Iyengar.
Yeah.
And we had like in our second training, we had people from the Himalayan Iyengar Institute come and teach our therapeutic classes. So it was therapeutic yoga
Mhm.
in the Iyengar way. So downward facing dog with the hanging rope. It was triangle pose on the wall, and it was half moon on the wall. And this is really funny because it actually ties into where I'm at now. I end up back at the very beginning with a lot of laying on the floor and hating it, and now that's predominantly what I teach. But for the middle bit, I was teaching what healed me, right? Or helped me heal rather. And it was this very Iyengar-y, like, I'm gonna stretch as much as possible. I'm gonna make my hands as big as much inner tension, which works for some people, some of the time, for some of the things. And where I was at, as I understand now, I was in that like very tamasic nervous system shut down, and I needed some kind of sympathetic activation or something to pull me out of that. And I had asked him, he said, it's not about the poses, it's about how you're doing them. And I was like, am I just giving myself space to let my nervous system untangle? That's how I visualized it happening. And he was like, yes, that's exactly what's happening. And I thought that that was the way that I had to do it for everybody, right? Like that was the one true perfect way to do things. And then fast forward a number of years, and that's doing things in that way is actually what landed me injured.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a similar thing. And then I wonder, because I know that you are like very clued in hypermobility aspects of movement. And I think my early yoga years as well, I really liked my teacher, although it was Hatha, he was very Iyengar minded and he had, the wall with the ropes and we were always hauling each other in downward dog and uttanasana and all these things. And there was something that was like quite satisfying of like what you just described there about feeling the edge of the posture or feeling something because when you're hypermobile, you don't really
Mhm.
feel a lot of stuff. I feel cold hands and feet, and then you're like living in this land of like your head. I don't know how to explain it, but like these strong stretches, you are suddenly sort of feeling more areas of your body, but then that had repercussions later on down the line. Like, I don't know if you.
Well, yeah, so I'm super sensory. Like I'm there's a spectrum, right? There's the I don't feel anything. I need a lot of sensation in order to feel. And then there's the sensory seeking end, and I am very sensory seeking. And so I was able to feel everything from the beginning, like to a fine level. Like press your second toe down, I could feel the rest of my body align. And I was like, this is magic. Whatever this thing is, I want it. I love it. I want more of it. And those like very like micro kind of adjustments I lived for. I really liked finding that, okay, this is connected because with the hypermobility, everything was disconnected, but I just kind of took it to the extreme
Yeah.
of, over engaging. And there is a balance, right? It's coming full circle. I'm like, oh, some of these cues are still correct. They still make sense. Like allow your thigh bones to sink into your hip socket. Okay, that's weird. And we can like pick that apart. But it creates an idea that creates an effect. And there's a difference between like pushing it and allowing it to happen. And I think finding that balance requires that one maybe go all the way in a circle to come back to it.
Yeah, that like makes a lot of sense. I think that's come up as well through other conversations about like can you avoid the over egging part before you get to like the revelation of, oh, I'm not sure. I don't have the answer so far is no. We can't avoid that bit. Maybe, but then you said when you went into Korea, there was something else there that wasn't necessarily well, it was physical in a sense that you felt this release in your body, but I don't like, did you find more of that kind of aspect of yoga when you went to India and
Yeah.
trained?
Yeah. So the something else came in Korea in a yin class. Um, I hated it. I hated every freaking second of that class because I'm real fidgety. And she was like, don't move. And I was like, what do you mean? It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. You want me to sit in a wide leg forward fold for 5 whole minutes? But that's actually the practice that really kind of carried me forward through some very difficult times later. What really drew me in, and like really excited me, I've always been quite an existential thinker, since, high school or whatever. Um, and so in India, I was just exposed to this other the rest of the system was very forward leaning. Yeah, a lot of the instruction was in alignment and pose work, but I had a lot of that philosophy training in my 200 hour from the beginning, and it was very clear to me that that was the point. Like it took 10 years until where we are now as to how to teach the two together. But for me, my personal exploration has always been around where is it that I am and where am I going and what's the point of anything? Like, why do we exist? Why are we human? Why do I have this body? Like, I can't not think about those things. And so I felt very weird until I found the yoga world and I was like, oh, this is normal. Like this is we're all just trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
Whereas in my regular life, I talk to my parents or my friends and they would just look at me like, why would I think about that? Like I'm just going about my life. And I'm like, but why would you not think about that? Totally
I can't
different.
help it. No, it's so true, isn't it? And I don't know if you find that like everywhere in India, like it's just full of philosophy of all kinds. Like, you're traveling through these little airports or whatever, and like the books are there, of all sorts of just like philosophical musings on all sorts of topics. So it was just like really, I don't know, just embedded culturally there. And you could have like really deep conversations with people like on the beach or wherever you're going about. And I found that aspect of the culture is like, yeah, very different from like what you were just explaining. Like that was my experience as a child and an adolescent having these big thoughts and being this tiny person and like, there's nowhere for them to go unless. But then you find these kind of structures where like, oh, you can talk about, whether that's yoga philosophy or you do a philosophy course of some kind. So that's really, really interesting of like, yeah, getting some of these big things out through the philosophy. So yeah, that's really it is really interesting, and just that you had this philosophical underpinning in your yoga training from the beginning. Um,
Yeah, and I was, and gosh, from high school through college, I was very much about like reading Western existential philosophy and just very interested in those big questions that I, they're so obvious and apparent to me that I can't not consider why I do anything. Like it's just coded into how I exist. And so finding a place where that was like, oh, we do this here, right? The inquiry is built into our existence. Like your questions are welcome. I might not have an answer, right? That might just be a question for you to go sit on a rock and think about, but the question is welcome.
yeah, there's always more questions. I've been writing today, and it was like it keeps popping up like Toyota's five whys. This is how they did like design on their, I think it was vehicles, but they would ask why like five times on basically every decision. And you're like, oh yeah, this is me. Nothing ever gets done. But it's just that philosophy, that critical evaluation. I think that's like, yeah, for me, has been a big win in the yoga kind of philosophy. And then how then now do you take the philosophical parts, or as a whole, how do you embed it into what you teach people now today?
Uh, I laugh because I never in a million years thought I would end up teaching how I teach today. Like I still wrestle with this sort of other side of myself, where it is slow and spacious and reflective, because the way I feel in most of my life is like go, go, go. I'm on it. I've got a to-do list. I've got things to do. I've I had to start writing at the end of the day all of the things that I did, so I would stop telling myself I didn't do anything in the day. And so I'm just so full of things all the time. And it became very apparent through nervous system shutdown, just massive crisis, um, that I was doing too much and my body couldn't handle it. And so I've ended up in this place where, I mean, there's reflection between every movement. There's so much space because it's most of us are not, at least the people in my world, are not uncomfortable in doing, right? It's very easy to add 17 different things to your plate. Most everybody I know. And that's how I grew up as well, seeing my family do that. But what the discomfort comes in the quiet, in the I'm sitting here and I got to find my phone, or I got to turn on the TV, or I got to eat while doing something else. I'm always trying to maximize my time and maximize my productivity. And like, that's fine, I guess, if that's your goal. But if your goal is to be a full spectrum human, a full and complete, you know, have a full experience, we need that space to assess and to reflect. And I don't think it should just be another thing on your to-do list to say, okay, I'm going to do my monthly reflection or my weekly reflection. I think it should be something that we practice doing so that in those quiet moments, we don't jump to just trying to fill that with something else. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's a way we can extend it as well. And I think that's such an important point because I think I've certainly been guilty as well of times like using some yoga techniques to like squeeze a little extra juice. Oh, I'll go to yoga and then I'll feel relaxed and then I can kick back up into whatever I was too tired to do or too strung out to do. And I think for me, a lot of the learning has come from like, so we live with autism in the household and like learning about it's like really common in autism to talk about these sensory differences, and then like for me, researching around all these kind of sensory friendly, stimulating, calming, under-regulating, and like having to set up my household so that each person is like able to move themselves in between different zones of regulation, as we call it, and how actually, like, that's just what we do in a yoga class for everybody, isn't it? Like, you're like taking people from one sensory experience into another one. And we were just talking about boredom, and I don't know if this shows my age more than anything else, but or where I live, but we spent quite a lot of our time as children like really bored. There was like no internet, nobody had computers in their home, no mobile phones. You certainly didn't want to speak on the house phone. And like you would just be, nobody was entertaining you in any way. So you would spend time like actively feeling bored, saying you were bored, going around your siblings, I'm bored, are you bored? And then suddenly something really creative would come out of the boredom. And like now feeling a lot more comfortable coming back as an adult and relearning how to be bored, but then also with my son trying to say, like, when he's constantly looking for this stimulation from some device or YouTube or whatever, you're like having to hold your nerve and be like, it's totally okay to be bored. Or participants in your yoga class, like, it's okay if you feel bored. That's useful to acknowledge.
I feel that. I feel that. So I know that we're approaching a place where I have not been taking enough rest when I notice that sort of like grasping. The volume in my car is just a little bit louder. It's all the way up.
Yeah.
Not a, it's all the way up. And it's like, okay, I need that intense stimulation. It's like, okay, whoa, hang on. That if we're needing that much stimulation, we need to completely discharge, to completely reset, and then to feel sensitive to less. And that's to tie it back into how I
Mhm.
teach. My sensitivity, my hypersensitivity is like sometimes a blessing and sometimes a curse. And sometimes as a blessing, it means I can feel into how everything is connected, right? And I can teach other people how to feel into that themselves versus like I used to try to control the outcome by do this thing and do this thing and do this thing. And now it's like, okay, well, feel this thing and feel this thing and feel this thing. Or can you feel this thing? Or can you feel this thing? And so that ability to, and this is the Nidra thing as well, to walk your way back from those senses until you're like blank slate. And then you can feel the subtle. It makes it much easier in your life to like know when you're climbing up before it's too late to like put the brakes on, be like, okay, I'm noticing this pattern of increasing. How do I walk myself back? Okay, well, I'm gonna lay on the floor for 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And like, yeah, lying on the floor for 20 minutes when you're in that state is like the hard, like you say, it's the hardest thing. Like you went to yin and it was like tough. I mean, I did my yin training for a week and it was tough. It was so hard. I was the person that had a breakdown that week. I always joke, like, it's like quite common in yoga retreats for there to be just like meltdowns of all kinds. But it was me, not just on my own, but that at that yin training, because it's like a lot, and you're like, your joints are having a hard time, and your nerves are like literally and figuratively like getting stretched over this course of a week. So yeah, saw the value in yin, but I have taken it in a different direction for now because of the hypermobility aspect. But that idea of having space in yoga classes rather than flowing, postures to postures to
That
postures.
rebound.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and like also, maybe where I would have taught 20 postures, now I would teach like 4, 6 or something like that, and it's having that confidence. Like, I don't know, would you say that having this philosophical background of why you're doing things gives you a bit of confidence to like do them, execute them?
You feel all that tension? Ugh, yeah, all of it in my body. Uh, do I have the confidence? That was the reaction.
Yeah.
I feel really insecure whenever I'm doing it. Am I giving them enough? Am I able to do it and like notice the insecurity and like, do I catch myself being like over explaining? Okay, the reason we're doing less is because like there's a point. I'm not being lazy. I didn't not plan a class for you today. In the beginning, it was really hard. But I've been teaching this way now for almost 2 years, which is crazy. Um, to me, like, because I did it one way for so long. Um, but I'm fully bought into this because I know the effect in my life. Um, I absolutely feel the difference in my body and I see the impact in my life. Often when I'm teaching, I'll give people the cues to, listen to their body and find the space and like take the variation that you need. And like, you don't have to do this at all. And I'm just like watching myself do it, being like, okay, listen to yourself. Listen to yourself.
Take your own advice. I know. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean it's still very difficult. Like it brings up all of because I see what I think they want or the projection of what I think they want based on what I used to want and based on, what sells and what is popular and what, gets shared and then I've done it long enough with the same group of people that they keep coming back and so clearly it's working. Clearly they're getting it. Um and I don't think they practice elsewhere. Like I think they just come to have that experience. And is it hard to leave so much quiet? Is it hard to watch them struggle and like I just want to go in and like tell them what to do so that they can have the experience I want them to have? Yeah. But I think we've like walked back quite a bit from do it this way to okay, whatever is fine.
Yeah. 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 I think I was like a micromanager teacher. Kind of went up and then just like flew off and down. Now I'm like, everyone's doing something different. That's amazing. Because we build poses, like I try and build postures or shapes or whatever from the inside out is how we kind of describe it. Like move around a bit and then we end up somewhere like and it's gonna be different because everybody's like different. Everyone's skeleton's different and things. So but yeah, there's this constant like toing and froing. Um but yeah, I've now become the lady that teaches yoga in the town hall. Do you know every town hall had it like through the 90s and earlier. But it's gone from like this like packed, booming, flowing to like something that's just a little bit different and back in the town hall again. And I'm fine with that as well. But like you say, there's like a journey that you're going on as a yoga teacher as well. And I think you just touched on something there that's really important about, you know, about the demands of modern life and probably they would be physically demanding in the past. I live somewhere where people still have quite physically laborious jobs, but now we're doing quite mentally demanding, not just jobs, but like life. So if you're clued into that and that you're seeing that there's something potentially coming down the line, that people are going to be coming to seek this, like,
Mhm.
how do we climb back out of these busy minds and busy heads and everything? So I think that was really quite astute the way that you spoke about that.
Well, and with the hypermobility, I tell people, I said, I'm the canary in the coal mine. I'm super sensitive. In my body, in my mind, like emotionally, energetically, I'm just super sensitive. And I didn't know that. I just thought I was really neurotic for a long time. And I'm like, oh no, I'm actually responding to different things. And so I'll tell people like, okay, if I'm noticing this, like I can't even have my phone is permanently on do not disturb. Like I can't handle it. And then when I'm on my laptop and something will ding, I'm like, oh, good God. And so that reaction constantly, I feel it. Maybe everybody doesn't feel it. Maybe they're like, it's not a thing. And I'm like, okay, but it's probably still a thing. It's probably just able to run in the background for you, but it's still happening. Like that's still reality, whether you're aware of it or not. And so if there are things that we can do, like if you're needing that intensity to get out of your head, like that's indicative of a problem already. So instead of trying to add more to it, can we just look at this thing that's here that's already a problem instead of adding and
Yeah.
just stay with
My top tip, put your phone on Do Not Disturb. That my phone's always on that. Everyone's like, I can never get hold of you on the phone. That's deliberate. I don't need extra harassment. But then, like you say, there's like a different back angle from that where you're like, I need to check this because things are going to be piling up. So you have to dab in every now and then. Yeah, when the email noise comes up from a previous life of being harangued by the inbox, it still sets off this like,
Opening the email and seeing 45,000 unread emails. It's just a little like, we're just gonna not look at that for
we
now.
have to, we have a group. So Bianca and I do the same business group together. And I think there's like a split where there's people who have zero unread emails, and then others like myself who have 60,000 unread emails that, I don't need to do anything with this.
But I might need something in there later.
I know, best not delete that. That's so funny. And then I know, like, so you've talked a lot about somatics, and my only dabbling with somatics was like in the hatha class, and it was like quite a specific prescriptive set of movements. So this was like 2000s maybe, where you like rolled about a little bit, and that was it. So I don't know if you want to explain. You've kind of discussed about sensory awarenesses, mental awarenesses. There's something here between the brain and the
Mhm.
soma, the body. So I don't know if you want to explain. Can you expand my understanding of somatics from this like prescribed, I don't know, drill that I had done in a previous class?
Yeah. So my training is in somatic yoga. Sorry, I had a voice. Somatic yoga. So it is prescriptive.
Mhm.
Um, there is it's called Cat Stretch Plus series. I have it for free on my YouTube. I can send that to you to link.
Yeah.
And it's 8 movements. They're all called the cat stretch, which is funny. Only one of them is like cat pose. It's the first one.
Mm.
The second one. And it's all floor based. And the series is meant to be sort of a maintenance kind of phase thing. It will work spine and hips and to a certain degree shoulders. And it's a really good series. It covers most of the joints in your body. Um, and I mean, it's solid. It's absolutely solid. And so I started teaching this. The way that it's sort of designed is so it's a maintenance phase. The Hanasomatic education, which is something that I will continue to pursue later, but my background in personal training and yoga and then understanding sort of the science behind the Hanasomatics, I've just kind of run with it and kind of done my own thing based on that education model. And it's a form of re-education. So the entire premise, so let me just give you a little backstory. Thomas Hanna is the dude who coins the term somatics in the 70s as a collective of body-based practices. He worked with Moshe Feldenkrais, I can never pronounce that name, uh, to develop that system. And then sort of the all the other systems that are kind of around the same time, Alexander technique, some of the dance stuff that's come from this, later into sort of somatic experiencing, that's more of the mental side. But the physical somatics is really based on this kind of premise of sensory motor amnesia. So sensory motor amnesia is basically your brain forgets or neuron synapses atrophy and you lose conscious voluntary control over your body. This results in pain sometimes, but posture changes, right? So if I am stressed and I'm here all day, over time, my brain is going to think that I'm relaxed. If I've just had so much stimulation, so much stress, and I'm like trying to relax and I'm here, I'm like, man, my shoulders are so tight and I'm trying to stretch and it's going to come back. It's going to come back and all this. Your brain's going to think that this is this is where you need to be because your stress levels have dictated that this is where I need to be. Somatics says, okay, let's make conscious what is unconscious. So let's focus entirely on what we're going to do. So we're bringing conscious awareness into the muscle. We're going to visualize or imagine. I don't actually visualize, I don't see most of the time, but you're going to imagine or kinesthetically kind of think about what you would do to achieve that sensation. And it's a contract and relax method. It's not stretching. It's the opposite of stretching, which if you're thinking about if I'm tight because of stress and then I'm forcing my body into stretch, your body's going to respond by contracting harder because it doesn't feel safe to let go. And then the somatics will say, okay, I'm going to focus here. I'm going to imagine, I'm going to visualize. I'm going to get the pre-motor planning part of my brain to turn on. It's going to maximize benefit. And then I'm going to move. So I'm going to change like proprioceptive distance. I'm going to get those sensory endings like kind of turned on. And then I'm going to work with my relaxation response, my exhale, to teach the muscle that it's safe to let go, to teach the muscle that it's basically like an etch-a-sketch. Like you color the whole thing and then you want to just kind of wipe the slate clean. And I think about it like if I'm at like 30% unconsciously contracted, and I contract 100% and I let go, I'm going to go right back to 30 because that's where my body thinks I'm going to be. So I'm just trying to go to like 35, maybe 40% and wipe the slate clean. And then that's the basic principle. And so over time, the movement part is one thing, but the sensory part, the rebound in yin is in somatics, we call it self-sensing. Somatic yoga is self-sensing. In maybe not yoga, maybe in just like somatics for rehab or somatics for pain, you might not call it self-sensing, but in yoga, we're tapping into that connection to what is this thing that's watching? What is this? Okay, I feel the things. I'm aware that I'm feeling the things, but I'm just watching. So that self. But in the physical, what you're doing is you're allowing your body space to let those neurons synapse, to rebuild neural pathways. It's super cool. It's the coolest thing that I've found. And I'm just obsessed now. Like I've brought it into everything that I do.
That's awesome. And it like just as you were explaining there that I actually read a paper that showed the impact of visualizing or whatever imagination you have of doing exercises is actually very beneficial to the muscles, which my
Mhm.
Pilates clients were delighted
Well,
to
there's
hear.
that. You read that story or heard that story? I think it's in Success Principles, but there's this story of this guy that was like a golfer, and then he went to prison. I'm gonna butcher it, but he went to prison. He was in prison for some time. And while he was in prison, he was visualizing a round of golf every day. So he's playing golf in his mind every day. And he comes out and he's like a scratch golfer. I don't know that that's the whole story. I don't know that's the whole story, but visualization is actually tapping into the part of your body that's responsible for movement. And so
Yeah.
somatics being like super accessible for everybody. Let's say you have, neurodegenerative, disease like
Mhm.
Parkinson's or, had a stroke or different neurological impacts have been made and you maybe can't move. You can still visualize and you can still practice and then with assistance someone else might help to change positionally. um Working with someone one-on-one is very different
Yeah.
than working in a group setting because there is the physical and then there is the yoga as with everything, but
Hmm.
the somatics makes it a lot easier to marry the two than it is to kind of just with a lot of movement. It makes it a lot easier to tap into the thing that yoga's pointing out, which is the what is this other thing that's watching? And
Yeah.
nidra is somatic, right? Nidra is like that pratyahara practice of going inward. which there's a lot of overlaps.
Yeah, I can see that. And like just like what you're explaining, it kind of puts like this safe framework around the exploration as well. Like there's names, labels for things, which make it, I think, kind of easy to grasp sometimes. Because you were just saying there's like self-sensing, which is kind of like a rebound. So we're labeling similar things. And it was just when you were saying like that you have this background in, well, you understand the physiology because you're a sports person, grew up around coaching, I'm sure you understand the body. And like this has been my journey as well, that I don't do a yoga training. I would go and do like anatomy training. So I did my anatomy training with sports science college students because anatomy's anatomy. And I remember once in a course, the teacher was like, well, you've not done yoga anatomy. And I thought, well, there's only the anatomy of the body. So red flag, So it's this idea of like being able to use your critical evaluation, understand the body, and then apply these techniques. So that sounds like it sounds like you would have a really rich class to go to. And then the is it like PNF stretching? Is that like kind of situation like what you were just describing about the
Yeah,
stretch and let go?
it's not dissimilar.
Yeah,
So PNF, you're not really changing positional length. You're kind of static, but you're adding resistance. So the for people listening, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, you are trying to increase that proprioceptive awareness. Somatics is more like, so it's pendiculation is the primary movement that I teach. So you're changing length positionally. So you're shortening, you're contracting to shorten, and then you're relaxing to lengthen. You're not actually stretching, which is super great for hypermobile bodies because you don't really want to stretch anyways, because a lot of times, like I'm at the point where my muscles don't like they don't really like it's the joints that are stretching, that letting go is the connective tissue. And so by teaching the muscles to let go without changing like the the what should I say? Staying within functional range, right? You're not stretching the joint is has been really helpful to have the muscles relax without the body tightening up as a response. And it's taken a couple of years, but I'm mostly out of pain
yeah,
uh, for the most part.
yeah. It's interesting what you're saying about losing. That was the other thing. Losing the ability to move certain parts of the body. So like after I had my son, I didn't know I was hypermobile. So all this, carrying a baby and then delivering a baby, very stressful on the joints as it transpires. And I had a hip dislocation before that because from being hypermobile and doing too many triangle poses, basically. But I lost the ability to move my lower back entirely. So it took like it was physio actually, but it was only after I found some movement techniques like the ones you're describing that was able to like get now I can feel and move my lower back. But when I tried to move it or think about it, there was just like a blank, there's like a black hole where I can't really explain it any other way. But it was a mixture of techniques to get it back to like being there.
And what you're explaining makes perfect sense. So I don't know if you're familiar with it's called joint by joint theory. Alternating joints in our body, like working up from our ankles. Like, so your ankles are really mobile, your knees are pretty stable. Your hips are pretty mobile, your SI is pretty stable. Right? So it kind of alternates going up. And so it makes perfect sense that if you've dislocated your hip, that the thing that above it, your lumbar, which should be pretty stable, but like more stable than your like thoracic.
Yeah,
But if your hips are supposed to be mobile and they've become too mobile, it would make sense that something around it is gonna seize up.
yeah. Yeah, and I think like for me, it took such a roundabout way. It probably took 10 years to be honest to like figure out how to let those massive muscles let go. And it wasn't a hypermobility. It was just She's called Jeannie DeBon, and she runs like the Zebra Club and some EDS resources here in the UK, but she does some global stuff as well. And we were just doing her program. It's really, really good. And she was just like, let your hips feel heavy. We're like lying, like ready to do constructive rest. And then boom, like the pain just disappeared. I thought, come on, and all this time, like that was like, but I suppose you would need to do the other bits to get to that bit first, if you know what I mean.
Everything's connected. And so, but that's exactly you've said it, right? It's not about doing something.
Yeah.
It's about letting your body do it. So if you've ever
Yeah.
had a massage, do you get massages?
I'm not a massive massage fan. But yes, when I have had really bad back pain, I have had sports massages. So yeah.
There you can sometimes feel a difference between the last therapist I had taught me a phrase. He's like, I call it imposing their will. So you
Yeah.
can feel it when a therapist is like, I want your body to do this, right? And they're
Yeah.
working at the knot, right? Versus a therapist who's really intuitive and going based on feeling, they're going with your body and they're letting your body lead. And if your body doesn't want to go, they're not forcing.
Yeah.
And that forcing is actually what causes the contraction. But the allowing is actually what allows things to move. Now, with the hypermobility, there's like a second layer because if you allow and you don't stabilize, then you're just going to be super floppy and end up, with a high risk of injury. And so, but it's again, it's not forcing will. It's not like trying to brace your core. It's feeling everything come together and integrate.
Yeah. Like a re-education, like you were mentioning of the synapses of the actual not nervous system in the psyche as we use it as a metaphor, but like the actual nerves inside your body. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And I think, we talk about like asana versus philosophy, but you really enrich this idea of the importance of the body and caring for the body and how caring for the body in certain ways creates these psychological benefits. So almost like you're treating that not, you're treating it in a roundabout kind of way. I think it's just
Yeah.
been really interesting to speak about, because you think, well, do you leave asana behind as you enter the heady heights of the geisha and these types of things? But you've convinced me otherwise in our discussion today.
I like I kind of dropped poses like asana for a while and really went for like a ground-based somatic movement, re-education movement. I don't know if you're familiar with Vinny, but it's like repetitive movement. So
Yeah,
instead of doing a pose and then like waiting, like in yin, you like a long pose and a wait, or in Iyengar even, it's going in and out, in and out, in and out, and then wait and maybe on the last one hold. And so some of that's brought into the somatic stuff, but I can't divorce them. And I can't because I'm human and I live in a body. And so, in the sutras, it talks about like sense objects, right? Very literally sense objects. Well, if you live in a human body, everything that you know, or even internal sense objects, thoughts, but thermoception, interoception, proprioception, and then the five senses. You can't escape that. So why not use that to your advantage? Because it's not about the things, it's our relationship to the thing. It's not about trying to manipulate my body to do something, but it's about cultivating that internal relationship. And that's what the soma is. In that hanasomatic world, the soma is not mind, it's not body, right? A soma scan or a self-sensing is not the same as a body scan because it's the integration of I have a mind and I have a body and I have this thing that is, consciousness,
hmm
right? You there's no you can't there's no way out of it. So I mean it's there, right? It's
yeah,
it's it's the relationship to the thing that's everything. It's a really natural. It just, I don't know, it makes so much more sense to me than like trying to do a triangle pose or a
yeah.
hand. I still handstand like several times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But against a wall just because it's fun and I like going upside down, not
Yeah.
because it's gonna. I've been practicing it 12 years. I still don't have my
Yeah,
hands.
you do
You
it.
know?
I can do it against a wall, but never when I go upside down, my whole I have no awareness of where my body is. Like that's how I knew I was expecting my son. I did a downward dog, which is normally fine, and I was like on like in front of a class and I was like, I have no idea where I am. Like something just like and it was like really early on and I didn't know if I was up or down and I thought, how am I gonna get and it turned out I was like pregnant. But yeah, it's really weird. Like but handstand, no clue, like it's something flips. Totally the wrong way around for me. I feel you have an answer for me here.
No, no, I don't. But that's super
It's good.
interesting because the relaxin increases. And so people who are
Yeah.
not hypermobile will have that increased flexibility. I used to work a lot with prenatal
Yeah.
personal training. And so there's that relaxin increase. But if you're already hypermobile,
Mhm.
it's just the
It's off pressure.
proprioceptive awareness is just not there.
Where am I? It's true. And it's really interesting. The hypermobility aspect's been really good because here it turns out there's a large genetic component. So there's like genetically quite a lot of hypermobility on the island. So I see it a lot.
Oh,
And yeah,
interesting.
it really is interesting. And also, like, there's a higher instance of autism here as well. And I know the two are linked as well. So having the sensory aspect and the hypermobility aspect really, it makes it really easy to like make accessible yoga spaces or movement spaces because you're able to piece these bits and bobs together for people who for all sorts, neurotypical, neurodiverse people, what like you were mentioning with muscular neuro issues, MS, things like that. So, just once you have a grasp of like the physiology and then nervous system, I love how you've put the soma together with that. It really is, yeah, it's given me a lot to take away and think about as well. It's really interesting.
Well, I'll leave this lesson because I know you do work in like ecology and sustainability.
Mhm.
I went away to the mountains to pray, like to just go be alone on a mountain by myself with my dog. I mean, like not for days at a time, but like for like an hour or so at a time. And I did this over Christmas and I was like, why am I doing like why does this matter? Right? I asked the big questions. Why does this matter? Why does this matter? Why am I doing this? Why do I care so much? And the way that I see it, the only way that we are going to come together as a species is to be kinder to ourselves, to slow down and actually feel what we're feeling so that we don't do it to other people, so that we don't continue to destroy our planet.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have the depth or the sensitivity to like I don't know, man. I look at a field get plowed for a new apartment complex to go up and I feel sad. I understand that people need somewhere to live. Like I get that, right? But we're exploiting our planet, we're exploiting each other because we're not connected to the feeling of how that affects us.
Yeah. And I think you just said it there, like your mountain is my ocean. Like that's where I go when I need like immediately to like work something through or to feel like you get the breeze. It just does something like what you were saying about that release. Like the minute I step out onto the beach, I feel relaxed, even if it's blowing like nine, gale force, whatever. But when you're going to ask these big questions, where do you go? You go to the mountains. My husband goes to the forest. We go to the beach, and I think there's just something there. There's my goosebumps for the chat about returning to nature and this reminder that you are a human being rather than an an automaton kind of, there's limits to your efficiency, like
Yeah,
to
and I
produce.
saw Sorry, I saw this, saw it very briefly. I didn't like go into depth, but it was like on Instagram and it was like, scientists have found that microbes in soil have an antidepressant quality and like the sort of tongue-in-cheek catty comment was like, it's almost as if nature's leaving us clues.
Oh, surprise. Imagine that you've evolved, I don't know, evolved from a complex, yeah, set of, outcomes. It really is interesting and, yeah, some great questions. And you answered loads of questions as well. You haven't just flipped it over, but, you know, I'd let out these big questions with no answers that we mentioned at the beginning. But is there anything else that's on the tip of your tongue?
Uh, this is coming through. Um, it's hard to feel sometimes. Sometimes like people who either feel so deeply, like it's hard to want to continue to do that, right? We're sort of taught that our feeling is like the problem, that we have to do these things, we have to achieve these markers, or we have these, we have to function in the world. And that our feeling is sort of the distraction from it. And I think it's the opposite. And it's not easy to bring feeling back into your body, especially after, a lifetime of stress and trauma, but it's worth it. Even when it doesn't feel like it, like the journey is worth it, because on the other side of avoiding that feeling is the connection with everything else.
Yeah,
That's all.
there's the yoga.
It's the yoga. That's why we do this.
Awesome.